Hi, this is Brent McKim, President of JCTA, and I want to talk to you a little bit about our salary schedule and the things that affect it. It can be kind of complicated, so being a teacher, I've created a visual aid that I hope will help us understand what's going on. What I have here is I have a graphical representation of our salary schedule using a cylinder with a very thick green liquid in it to represent the salary schedule. And down here at the bottom, as you can see, we have a little eyedropper that's full of air. So if we squeeze the eyedropper full of air, we can create a bubble that comes in like a new hire on step 0 of the salary schedule. And each year that goes by, the little bubble will go up 1 step per year through this very thick liquid, making its way up to the top, which is step 25 up here 25 years later. You can see there's a little white dot that's already up there, a little white bubble that's made it up there. Here's a little gray bubble that let's take this as a new hire, and for the sake of this discussion, let's look at a teacher that's hired with a master's degree. That's called a rank 2 teacher. So we're going to use numbers for a rank 2 teacher. When this rank 2 teacher is hired, the little bubble comes out and comes in to our example on step 0 and starts to move up through the steps. What does that look like? Well, to begin with, in 2011, this step 0 was at about $45,000. I've rounded to the nearest $500. And some steps are bigger and some are smaller, so I've averaged out, and each line on here represents $1,500, so we have nice even steps. Some are a little more, some are a little less, but on the average, this is what they work out to. When this new hire is hired at $45,000 a year, he or she may aspire to be like the teacher next door, who is up here at step number 4, making $51,000 a year. And so I'm going to make a little mark here to show us that that's maybe a big deal, because the $45,000 teacher is looking to the day when they're going to be able to buy $51,000 worth of goods and services and break through the $50,000 mark. When this teacher was hired, the average salary was up here around $60,000. The top salary was up here around $73,000. And there are probably plenty of bubbles all through here, but we're just going to have the new hire, the teacher next door that's here at step 4, that the new hire is looking toward reaching that point, and here's a white bubble to represent a teacher that's at the top of the salary schedule. Well, if there were never any raises and never any inflation, this would all be very simple, and the teacher would just bubble up through here, watching his or her buying power increase each year, and the salary schedule probably wouldn't need to change because there'd be no inflation, and everything would be very simple. However, there are a couple factors that are complicating the situation. Namely, we have inflation, which reduces the buying power of salaries, and then we have raises, which provide larger salaries to make up for that. So let's suppose we go back to the year 2011. If we go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics in Washington, D.C., we can see that the inflation rate in the year 2011 was about 3%, which means that $45,000 1 year later would no longer buy $45,000 worth of goods and services. So we're going to look at this as inflation adjusted dollars so that we can keep using 2011 figures, which means 1 year later, $45,000 would buy 3% less than it would the year that this new hire was hired. So all things being equal, this entire salary schedule would have to move down some, because the buying power of $45,000 would be 3% less. However, if we receive a pay raise, the pay raise provides more funding and moves this back up again. So if there was a 3% loss due to inflation, but we received a 3% pay raise, then this step 0 would be right back to the same buying power as it was the year before. So some years pay raises can be greater than inflation and the entire thing moves up. Some years pay raises can be less than inflation and the whole thing moves down. Or if the pay raise is exactly equal to inflation, we would call that a cost of living adjustment, and the cylinder would stay at exactly the same level. So let's look at what actually happened in 2011. As I said, in 2011, the inflation rate was 3%. We received a 2.5% pay raise that year. So the average teacher saw their pay raise fall 5% behind inflation. In other words, inflation was 3%, they earned 2.5%. So the entire salary schedule lost about 0.5% to inflation. If we use the average salary of $6,000, 0.5% of that would be $300. So 1 year later, we would move this down a little bit because it'd be $300 lower. But 1 year later, even though the whole thing sank, the teacher moves up to step 1 now. So you can see they're still better off than they were the year before. Let's look at what happened the next year. In 2012-13, the inflation rate was 1.7% and we received a 1% raise. So we were 0.7% behind inflation, which means we lost about, on average, $420 more. So we've got to move this down another $420. And we move the bubble up one more step because a year's gone by and this new hire has moved up. Of course, this individual would have moved up a couple steps too. And this individual up here is at the top and there are no more steps. So that individual has just lost buying power and there are no steps to make up for it. Let's look at what happened in 13-14. In 13-14, the inflation rate was 1.6%. We got a 0% pay raise, which means we lost another one, the entire cylinder, the entire pay scale lost another 1.6%, or about $960 to inflation. So we move it down again. Okay. So, but again, the teacher takes a step up because they have another year of service, and now they are at step 3. This teacher would go up another step as well. And then in 2014-15, the last year for which we have inflation information, the inflation rate was 0.7%. The inflation dropped to a quite low rate. Our pay raise was about 1.4%. So we actually picked up about 0.7% compared to inflation that year. So we can actually move the column back up a little bit, and this new hire comes up to here. So over that time period from 2011 to 2015, what's the total cumulative effect of this? The total cumulative effect of inflation is we lost $300 the first year to inflation. We lost the whole salary schedule, lost $420 the next year, lost $960 to inflation the next year in buying power, but regained about $420, which means overall, due to inflation, it had lost about $1,260. So just to adjust this to where it's fairly accurate, if this is $1,500 per inch, it's about minus $1,200, it puts it about here. But there was a second thing that happened during this 4-year period of time. During this 4-year period of time, the deduction from teachers' paychecks for their pension, for their Kentucky Teacher Retirement System pension, increased by 2%. In other words, an additional 2% was taken out for retirement payments, which means another $1,200 was lost during this 4-year period of time. So we need to move this down altogether. $1,260 due to inflationary losses and another $1,200 due to increased deductions for retirement, which is a total of $2,460. So over the 4-year period of time since Dr. Hargens has been in JCPS, The entire salary schedule on average is about almost $2,500 below where it was when she came here, so we'll move it down to here. Probably right about there on this scale. So you can see that this new hired teacher, compared to where they were hired when they came in with $45,000 worth of buying power, is above the buying power when they were hired, but the entire pay scale has sunk by about almost $2,500 for every step on it. Fortunately, the bubble is moving up somewhat faster than the entire cylinder is sinking because the raises are not keeping up with inflation, but the bubble is keeping ahead of the sinking a little bit. So, however, though, remember when the new hire was first hired, they were looking forward to reaching step 4 when they would have $51,000 worth of buying power in 2011 dollars. Well, by the end of 2015, the new hire has reached step 4, but when he or she got to step 4, you can see step 4 has sunk to where it's probably about $48,500 worth of buying power, something like that, not $51,000 worth. So when they got there, the real buying power of it still isn't the $51,000. They haven't broken through the $50,000 mark in terms of inflation-adjusted buying power. And so, in a sense, it's worse for the employee up here at step 25, because at step 25, they don't have any more steps to compensate for the sinking that's been occurring in the whole cylinder since Dr. Hargens arrived. And so their buying power has simply declined by a total of 4.1%. Now, there are some who will say that, well, people are all right because people are moving up faster than the whole thing sinks. But as the representative of the professional educators in the district, our concern is with maintaining a high standard for the profession so that when a new hire is hired, they are able to enter into a professional career with a professional compensation. As you can see, the new hires now, when they were coming in with $45,000 of buying power, they're now down at probably about $41,500 or something in that range on the average. So they've lost a significant ground to inflation, and step 1 is lower than step 1 was when the new hire was hired, and step 2 and so forth. So the point of all of this is to say we can't just look at the bubbles that are rising up as the entire salary schedule sinks. We have to recognize that we have a professional compensation system for professional educators, and we have to concern ourselves with the entire cylinder. And we have to be mindful that we are providing pay raises that are comparable to inflation and other factors like KTRS, or the real buying power of everyone on the salary schedule suffers in the process. And eventually you reach the point where you no longer have a professional salary schedule at all that recognizes the professionalism and attracts and keeps quality teachers. So I hope that this helps explain the factors that are involved, and I hope that it helps you understand why it's really important to have raises that balance inflation, because even though the little bubble is rising through something that's sinking fast enough to stay above water, we have an obligation, I think, and a responsibility to the profession to maintain a professional salary schedule. And quite honestly, when the new hire was hired and was looking forward to reaching a real purchasing power of $50,000 so they maybe could buy their first house or car, it's important to them to be able to plan their life and family and have some expectation that the steps that they see ahead of them will have some similar value and meaning when they get there. So that's my explanation. I hope it's helpful. If you have any questions, you can email me at brent.mckim@jcta.org or give me a call at JCTA 454-3400 I hope this is helpful. Thank you.